Hello, and welcome to another episode of Healing Visionaries online show. I'm your host, Cailin OConnor, and today we have with us Willa Harlatt. She is a shamanic teacher and ceremonialist. Willa was first called by the spirits after an illness as a child and has spent 50 years since then learning from different traditions, and with many teachers and several initiations to weave them together to create a unique form that speaks to the person that she is today. She works in a traditional manner to offer healing services and ceremonial work to address ordinary life issues and to support others to find a sense of place and purpose in today's world. Her particular interest lies in how we reweave ourselves back into the stories of the community and the land on which we live. Welcome, Willa. Thank you so much for your time and joining us today.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you for doing this. I think it's very important, this kind of thing. Let's, we spread the energy out into the world. So
absolutely. Yesterday when we talked, there was a hummingbird came directly to the window, but
Yes, that's right. Absolutely right. Yes, I felt it was a very good omen for your show, and this little warrior with its beautiful beating wings and its lightning dance, and there's something about being a warrior in the world with lightness, isn't there? How we walk lightly on the earth, but we hold ourselves strong. So I thought that maybe that this is what really your conference is about, your interviews are about, how we do that.
Yeah, I thought that was particularly significant. And, the hummingbird is often a spirit animal for many of us. It's one of my special ones.
Well, there you go. He came right to the door and was looking through the window.
Yeah. So, I'd love to hear more about your story and how you began working and came into shamanism.
So my story, well, it started when as a child, I was one of those odd children, as many of us are. I didn't really quite fit in. I was slightly daydreamy, slightly sensitive, slightly feisty as well in other ways. And my parents used to rescue dogs, and what started to happen, really at the age of 2 and 3, is people started to bring their dogs for me to sit and talk to, and it calmed them down and it did some healing, and I was just a child and I was just talking and I was just being myself, and I would, like children sing to little, dogs and just talk to them, and people realized that I had an effect. And then when I got to the age of 8, I was pulled by the spirits through a serious illness and a death experience. And that's when the spirits first started teaching me. So it was from that moment on, really, that I started, my first guide started to give me teachings. And that made my body physically change. And I started puberty. I became a woman at the age of 8, in terms of the body, because of the teachings. And then from that moment on, teachers would appear in my path. Really, I had my first teacher when I was in my early teens, my first human teacher, because I was very angry about it all. I was not happy. I wanted to be an ordinary teenager, that goes out and parties, and I couldn't manage it, because, when you're that young and you have that kind of experience, you know when people are lying, you see things differently. So I was quite angry as a teenager.
Wow, interesting.
I didn't really want this path. I wanted to be I wanted to just be a bohemian and be an artist and float around, but it wasn't to be. When the spirits call you, they call you, and that's the end of it. There's not a choice.
8 years old though, that's so young.
Traditionally, the spirits do call people to be shaman as children. It does happen quite young. I think with Western people, it's maybe not recognized as much, but that is an age that I hear a lot. Around the age between 6 and 9 is the age that a lot of people first get pulled by the spirits. And I suppose it's because you're still pliable, you're still juicy, there's something about children, isn't there? And so, in some traditions, they say, you're born as a shaman, even though we still need to have training. You're just born that way. So I suppose they give you a few years grace before they decide to say, okay, come on, girl, or come on, boy. Now we get on with it.
Right.
So that's,
So then as a teenager, you knew that it was a spiritual calling. It was an awakening. You knew that that's what it was about, and working with that teacher.
absolutely, yes. I mean, the spirits, the first teachings I had were really absolutely clear. There was no woolliness about it, really clear. And it's a bit tricky. My father is a lay preacher in the Baptist church, so it was all a bit tricky. Didn't I knew to not necessarily talk about it. So you sort of sit on these things, but I would sneak out of the house and go outside and talk with the spirits, and I became a wayward teenager. And then, so yes, I was very young when and the teachers just began to appear. And, I find it's interesting because a lot of people say, I can't find a teacher. It's really hard for me. And I would say, the teachers will come, but not necessarily as you expect them to. Sometimes we have to have teachings in one particular thing in order to prepare us for when our shamanic teacher comes along. So it may be that you just go and learn general energy work, or you just go and learn about being in nature with someone else, and that prepares you for your shaman. So there's all sorts of different teachers, So I've had lots of different types of teachers. So specifically shamanic teachers that shaman that have taken me under their wing and taught me, and then other different types. There's many different types of teachers in the world, and I think we get a slightly blinkered idea about what our teacher must look like. So I always say to people, just go and learn something. That might open the door until your shamanic teacher comes along. So I
Yeah,
think people to
that
just,
makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So what are some of your ways? How do you work in the shamanic practice? Do you use guides, or what kind of things?
Yes, I work with, I have what I call a family of guides. Right? So over the years, like it sort of grows, have this little family, and you're always like the baby amongst them. And then you have one, and then, you might have a teacher and they'll introduce another one, and then you'll go somewhere and another one will appear. And over the years, those relationships firm up, and through practice and building the relationship, it's very much like any relationship. You have to keep on it. You have to keep talking to them. You have to keep feeding them. You have to keep listening to them and sharing yourself with them. So that's very much part of it. Shamanism really is about relationships and connections. That's really the essence of it. How our relationship to the spirits, our relationship to the land, our relationship to each other, our relationship to the water, and how that works. And so it's understanding our place in all of that. So I use various different techniques for individual healing. I use a lot of magical songs because that's one of my things. I always say that everything is made of song.
Wow.
If you think about song, like it's molecules is it's just molecules vibrating, okay? And then they begin to take a form, and we can hear the song. They have all these experiments where they put iron filings on a drum and make push sound up beneath it, and they form patterns. So that's really what we are. We're just a pattern of molecules, right? And so some
Oh,
of the
that's
healing we
beautiful.
do, especially when it's energetic healing or when we're using magical songs, we're rearranging those patterns of molecules that form the people that we are. So that's part of what I do. And then, I love ceremonies. So I do a lot of ceremonies for people. For lots of different reasons, there's different ceremonies for different things.
So in your community, people come to you when they or need a ceremony, or how do you work with the ceremonial aspect?
Well, it really depends on where they come. So, you know, if their business is struggling, I have a ceremony for that. I can help, if their business is like, they haven't got, people coming in and buying stuff. I have a little ceremony for that. Or, if they're very lost, we have a ceremony for that as well. Um, so there's lots of different things, there's lots of layers and types of ceremonies. One of my favorite things is that I help women have babies. I say, I get women pregnant is what I say, but there's a way of working with them. So it's always, first of all, would the spirits help us? So first of all, we ask the spirits, will you help me help this person? Right? And if they say yes, okay, right, then we can start. So I have, various techniques of helping women to get pregnant. And really it's about helping them stay pregnant and carry the baby to full term. That's usually what the issue is. So, we do, and that's a 9-month ceremony.
Oh, wow.
Lasts the 9 months, we make a little pot for the baby to live in. So, it's inside the mother's tummy, but I have my own little pot. I sing to the baby every day and do other things, feed it. And then after 9 months, we take the lid off and the baby's ready, the baby's cooked, the baby's ready to be born. And usually within an hour of me taking the lid off, the baby is actually physically born.
Really?
Right, it's quite amazing sometimes. Usually I say to the mother, I'm taking the lid off now, just so you know. And then, a couple of hours later, yes, the baby came an hour after that. So I give the mother a warning.
That's powerful. That's fast too.
I love doing that. Yeah.
So can you just give us a snapshot of your life, a day in the life of being a shaman? And you live in Nova Scotia, right?
Well, New Brunswick. It's next door.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
But I'm not from here originally. So, I've lived all over the world, and including living in the rainforest. So what am I doing? It sort of varies, but it always includes feeding the spirits, talking to the spirits. And so then it really depends on, who's coming to me and what's happening, there's a thing you can do, so you can have your first attention is really about your own thoughts, and then just outside yourself are the little sounds that happen around you, and then you can go a bit further and a bit further, so you can actually pay attention to what's happening in the world around you and start listening to that. So I always have a practice of listening as far as I can go and what is needed today. And maybe, I need to do a little ceremony for something that's happened in the world, or, so it really depends, but it's all about, listening, feeding the spirits, talking to them, listening, and then making a judgment about what's needed. So, but most of the time it's very ordinary, we're people, and and we have very ordinary lives in between the other bits.
Of course. Yes.
Yeah.
I just wondered if people were mostly coming to you, but it sounds like you have an intuitive process too of each day feeling what's needed.
Yeah. People come to me, usually it's word of mouth. I'm very bad at getting myself out there. It's something I have to work on. Because I'm one of those quiet people. I'm not a noisy person, and I think it's important to be quiet. I'm quiet in order that I can hear what's going on in the world. I'm quiet because that's my nature. I'm quiet because my medicine is more of a quiet medicine. And for me, true wisdom, true power, is quiet. It walks quietly. So it's not, we don't need to make this big bravo about who we are. So a lot of it is word of mouth. And it's very organic. There's not much structure to it, So, yeah. I don't know if that's a very good answer. It's hard to.
No, I love it because it shows us, you know, how the day goes and what you're paying attention to.
Mm.
And
I'm
a lot of you,
Yes, I'm very bad at things like doing meditation and stuff like that. I'm hopeless. I'm one of those people. I don't do it much. I think because I'm naturally quiet and I'm a natural listener. But I know, like some people, I feel terribly ashamed when they tell me they meditate every day for an hour and then they raise energy and they have all these practices. And I don't necessarily do all that stuff. So I say, don't do what I do, because what I do works for me, but it won't work for everyone else. You know, some people need a bit more structure. So
right, right. Good advice.
yeah.
A lot of your work is with the land also, isn't it? What are some of the ways that you work with the land?
Yes. Well, I work from the basis that we belong to the land. Okay, so we have this idea somehow that we are these little individual spots where, you know, we just need to focus on us. And we stop about here, you know, we stop just outside our skin, and we're sort of these little islands. And that's nonsense, actually. We don't, we, you know, we're connected to everything. And it doesn't, and you know, I hear people say, oh, I do this, I cut these cords. We can't actually do that. We can't actually disconnect ourselves too much from what it, you know, because we're just part of the fabric of life. And we don't
Mm,
really have the power to separate ourselves from the fabric of life. But what we, you know, if we start thinking we're going to cut ourselves, we we turn that energy back inwards, and it becomes an unhealthy energy. And for me, we cannot truly heal ourselves until we heal our communities and heal the land, because we're part of that. So if we don't look to the land, if we don't look to the waters and do our part, if we don't look to our neighbors, there's always part of us that is unhealed. So that starving child in Africa is part of me. So I need to attend to the starving child in Africa. You know, so I need to attend to all of it, because the human beings are one, really, you know, there's a spirit of all human beings is what I'm talking about. And we're part of that big one thing, although we have our individual lives. So it's about you know, we breathe out and we attend to the land, and I'm going to tell you in a minute how you do that. And then we breathe in and we see to ourselves as individuals a bit, but then we breathe out and we extend further when we attend to the land of the community. And then we breathe. So we have to have the both, because that, you know, everything about the world tells us that that is the pattern, you know, the tides. The rising of the sun, it goes up and down. The moon goes in and out. Like everything about the world tells us that that is the pattern that happens, the in and out, contraction, expansion. So when we're talking about the land, you know, the land, literally our bodies are made up of the land. All the food that we eat comes from the land. Even when we're eating meat, those animals are eating food that is grown from the land. So we're literally made of the same thing, of this earth that is our mother. So we need to go and attend to that, and we need to go to our mother, and we need to say, hey there, I remember who you are. You know, we go to when the waters are really struggling right now, you know, they're very polluted, and water is life. You know, we can't, without water, there is no life. So we need to be very conscious about that. So we go to the rivers and the oceans and the streams, and we walk as though we were living prayer, I suppose is how I would put it. So as though we're pollen covered. So we walk out with, you know, very mindfully, and we go and we sing to the river, and we say, here we are, you know, you give us so much, you give us life. I'm going to give something back to you, and I'm going to sing to you, and that is my form of prayer. Or I'm going to make offerings, you know, and we have to be careful with the offerings, because it's about being mindful, is that they're not going to pollute the land. Okay, so they have to be able to, you know, they have to be biodegradable. You know, they could be petals and stuff like that, but that it's going to be reabsorbed by the land. You know, some people put candles with those metal containers, and then you just litter the land really. So we have to be very mindful. So, we might make offerings. If we can, if there's a group of you, we can go out and we can possess. So there's a way of walking in a group of people. If you look at indigenous people, they move as one. Something in the rest of the world forgotten. And they move as one. So they come out and they'll do these dances, and they just all know it. And that really, it reminds us that's how we should be. I don't know if you know what a murmuration is, but a murmuration,
tell us.
well, what I'm going to say to everyone is go and look it up, because I think you need to see it. Look up murmuration, go into YouTube or something like that, and you'll see it's the way starlings move. So these great big flocks of starlings, they'll move like one body. It's like this alien creature that's made up of hundreds of starlings moving around and changing shape. And when one changes shape, they'll all follow, and then another one will take the lead and they'll follow again. And that's really how human beings are. If one person can change the way that everyone else moves. And so when we go out as prayer, but hopefully we're changing the way.
I love it.
In the murmuration of humankind. So we go out as prayer. And so like when we possess on the land, process on the land, we do these. There's a very simple step. We do one forward, one back, two forward, one back, two forward, one back, two forward, one back, two forward, one back. So it's very simple. There's a little pattern to it, and you sing as you go, and then you start to all move at the same time, and it becomes a swaying motion, and gradually you move across the land singing your song, and you become like one huge river of prayers across the land, and it's incredibly powerful. You can then go 1, 2, 3 forward, one back, 1, 2, 3 forward, one back. So there's a rhythm in the movement itself, is a song as well. So you carry this prayer in the movement and the song that you're singing, and you just walk across the land like it and then come back. And so that's a way of really, powerfully praying across the land, powerfully showing gratitude to the land, powerfully being part of that murmuration and changing the way that it might move.
Wow,
right?
That's amazing.
We become the living prayer, right? So I think that's important to do. I have a little list because I know I'm going to forget some things. So prayers, possessing the songs. Oh, and the other thing is that we have to be careful with what comes out of our mouth. So like if we're living prayers, we have to somehow, and I don't like using the word elevate, because I think you then get judgments around it, but we have to, our language is a gift. There's one of the gifts of human beings is our language and the way we use it. And it's become, as the world begins to fall apart around us, it's become very crass and very simple. And so we need to be able to change it and make the way our ordinary language is also become a prayer. So we can look at people and we can tell them what we see in them. We can tell them how beautiful they are. We can say thank you. Just just saying thank you to someone is being a prayer in motion. It's showing gratitude. And the way we use language, we can make it more poetic, because it really is adding pollen to our words. It makes it into honey, and it goes out and it colors the world around us. So that's another thing that we have to be careful about. So we don't, I think, like I see some people go into ceremony and they sort of stand about and they do a bit of gossiping and talking about ordinary stuff, and then they do a bit, and then you can't do that. You've got to really be conscious. Like in your own homes, there's a place for just, having fun and, all that ordinary life stuff. But then, You have to say, okay, now I'm going to be the living prayer. Now I'm going to send my words out like sweet honey-covered arrows into the world to make a difference. And it moves out, it moves out, it moves out. And that's part of what we do in the community as well. So part of what we do in the community is that we can actually, we can we can go as a group and walk down the high street and sing if we have the courage, like sometimes we just have to push ourselves a little. Or, if we're on our own and we don't have people that we know can do it with, you can take a little stick and you can make little marks in it and make prayers as you're making those sticks and tie colored threads. And then you can go like a stealth prayer, like a stealth healer, out in and plant these sticks around the place in which you live. And that is like you're sending your prayers out, you're sending your prayers out, you're sending your prayers out. Or tie little prayers into the trees around where you live. Nobody need know, but it makes a difference, it begins to change the environment in which you live, because just as we belong to the land, we belong to each other. So every place that we live in has its own spirit. So the village that we live in has the spirit of the village that's made up of all the actions and thoughts and words and sounds of everyone that lives in that village. If it's a town, if it's a city, the bigger the place you live, the stronger the spirit. So we have to start feeding that spirit in the hopes that the spirit will be full of joy and full of abundance, and we will all be healed in the process because we belong to that place. It doesn't matter if you think, oh well, this is not really the place I actually belong. You're living there now, so you belong there now at this point in time, right? So this, you then belong somewhere else where you end up being part of that energy.
I move around countries every few years, and the first thing I always do is this thing, what you're saying, connect with the land and the spirits there and ask permission to be there, because I find if I don't do that, it's what you just said, then you feel like you don't belong there, but you're there.
Exactly. And one of the things, I'm glad you said that, because you reminded me of a really important thing, is that wherever you live, you learn the stories of how the land came to be that way. And that's there's a lot of teachings in that. So most places will have old stories and that rock over there, that's when the giant threw the rock because he was arguing with his brother that's also a giant, and that's how that rock came to be. Or that's how that hill came to be, is the giant needed a pillow for his head. Or, there's a lot of giants in these stories. But every place has a story of how it came to be the way it is. So you go and you learn those stories, and it helps embed you into the place that you're living. And another thing that I used to live on Dartmoor in the UK, is that I used to go out there, and on Dartmoor you have these huge tors, great big rocks. I used to go out and I used to tell them stories.
Oh.
It's about the relationship you build. So you go and you tell them, so it can be stories of what's happening back in the village, or what's happening in people's lives, or just stories, and you share it with you. They become your brothers and sisters in that way. Like when you in any relationship, it takes that, doesn't it? Sharing.
And they give you songs too. You were telling me before.
Yes, exactly. So if you might then sit quietly and listen and listen and listen, and you might start to hear songs that they're singing back to you, and they might teach you a song to sing, especially for them, or particularly for a particular reason. So you can go out and you can learn new songs, and these are magical songs that the stone people have given you, or the rivers have given you, or but that takes a bit. Once you've built a bit of relationship, you just sit quietly and you just listen and you listen and you listen, and then you might catch a little thread. So you practice that little thread. Maybe
especially in these sacred sites, if you just stop and do the listening piece, that's when they come, the messages or songs or whatever it's going to be.
And you can take all those little threads, gather some together, and you suddenly found you have a really powerful song. So it takes a little while, but it's a really powerful thing to do. And it's a way to really build a profound relationship with the place in which you live. So that's the community that you live in and the land that you live on. And so another way of working with the community is to make a bundle. I love bundles. I adore bundles. So you let me know if I'm running out of time. I adore
Tell us about the bundles, please.
I adore bundles. You have no idea. They're like little, beautiful little creatures. So if you have a group of friends and you're doing something together, or you run a healing center, or you just, you do a lot of stuff together, you can make a bundle that helps to feed the relationship you have together. So you have bundles for lots of different reasons. I'm just going to give you this one way of doing it for this one reason. So basically, it's layers and layers and layers and layers of prayer. And in the center is something that each of you have put something that represents who you are. So you start off, you take what's going to be the outside layer and you lay it on the floor or surface you're making the bundle on, and you rub your hands, all of you rub your hands over it, and you sing over the fabric, because that all is going to go into the fabric and it will be held, and you make prayers, and you can maybe put cornmeal over it, and then you put the next layer on and you do more prayers, and maybe put some tobacco in that layer, and move your hands over it, and you will sing over it, and you tell the fabric how wonderful it is that it's going to hold the bundle of what you all have together. And then you might start off with 7 or 8 layers. And so the last one will be what will be the inner layer. And then each of you in turn will hold up the little thing that, a small thing, little thing that represents who you are, and say, and just talk about what it is. I've chosen this because, I might choose a bit of pollen. I've chosen it because pollen, I understand, is the sweetness of life. It's prayer itself. And then you put it in the next person. And then you gradually wrap them up, each layer. You wrap it up round the next one, and then round the next one, and round till you get to the outside. And then you take a bit of special cord that you've chosen, and you tie it up so it's safely bound. And then each of you hold it, and you cradle it, and you sing to it, because now you have this little child. When you hold these bundles, you realize they are alive, and so you sing to it, and you feed it with more prayers, and it goes around, and then usually it's put in a bag, and then you take turns looking after that bundle. And whoever's got the bundle, it's their responsibility every day to keep feeding it and keep singing to it. And you can take it on walks and take it to festivals. And so all that goes in. And then every year you can add a new layer. So they get bigger and they get bigger. And that really, that contains the heart of what you have together, the spirit you have together, that the beating heart is inside that bundle. So that's one thing. If you run something, a group with people, or you're doing something special, you can make a bundle and each feed it, and the heart starts beating strongly. Yeah. So that's one reason you do bundles.
What about using that with people or friends that aren't really interested or doing this kind of spiritual development, or maybe they don't think this way? Do you have any?
I would say that they need to make a bundle. You really need them to be part of it. Otherwise, they're not part of it. Do you know what I mean? You need to include them. But you see, I think that if you have a group of 4 or 5 strong people, you could make a bundle for the place in which you live. Now, it depends where you live. If you were to do it for someone like London, I would say, well, you're taking on a whole lot of stuff there, and maybe that's not such a good. So it really depends on where you live and what's going on, okay? But you can make up little bundles for healing. Sometimes I have these bundles that are specifically, I rub on people across their bodies for healing. So if you're working with people that are not necessarily into it, you can fill them with rose petals and all sorts of stuff. And then you can just, if they don't really understand, you can say, just let me try this thing. You can rub it over them, or you can hold it on their chest.
Yeah.
It'll absorb some of the pain they're carrying. So it's difficult to include people that think it's all nonsense or are scared of it. And that's why I say it's good to be a stealth prayer, to put those prayer sticks into the community in which you live, because you're just letting the energy ripple out, and you're not dealing with people's karma. You're just saying the prayer is that the place in which I live, the community in which I live, becomes a good place to live. It becomes a harmonious place to live. It becomes an abundant place to live. And then you let the prayer take care of itself. Because what will happen is those people that are intent on making disharmony will probably be pushed out by energy, right? They'll find they really don't belong anymore, and it'll bring new people in. So you let the prayer take care of itself. You tie prayers to trees. And there's a wonderful thing that I love that people do. They do this knit bombing, so they knit up trees. Have you seen that? And
Yes.
that's almost like a prayer, they're beautifying the place in which they live. Or some people will go in the night and they'll plant flowers, and again, you see, that can be a prayer. As you put the plant in, you can put prayers in to the ground and then let the plants grow. There's lots of ways of feeding the environment in which you live. I don't know if that makes sense.
Love it. Yes. Well, so it could be for a situation too. Couldn't you make a bundle to do, some difficult situation at work, let's say, if you have an external work environment that's difficult? Could you?
I would say maybe not a bundle for that, because if the thing with the bundle is that you need the people that are in it to be involved in it. Otherwise, what happens is that it gets, if you're in it and you've put other people in it and they don't know, it's going to be really uncomfortable for you because you're bundled. So if it's a work situation, what I would say,
I'm not putting them in my bundle.
Exactly. So you've got to be careful, because you've got to remember you're bundled with people and they've all their issues. But in a way, that's what it is, because their issues are already your issues. But you might not want to be bundled up with them. You just have to be a bit careful. So I would say in that kind of situation, if you're in a difficult work environment, you go and you can make, if it's an office environment, you can take a little plant and put it on your desk, and you put prayers in that plant every day, and you let prayers take care of itself. May this work environment become more harmonious. May this work environment support life in a good way. Yeah? Or little pebbles, and if there's already plant pots, you can blow on a pebble, and put in a prayer in it and put it on the top of the plant pot. It's like stealth planting of prayers, okay? So you can do, little, so it's not, you're not saying, you're not praying that Dorothy in the next office is kinder to you. That's not what you're doing. You're just saying, may this work environment become harmonious. So you're not necessarily picking on specific people. It's just about the environment and making the prayer that it's a good place and it supports life.
Yes. Well, we're almost out of time. I'm very curious also about your name on Facebook. I saw you say Spinner of Honey. It's so beautiful. What does that mean?
Oh, well, really, that's about making the prayer, pushing the prayers out. Honey is the sweetness of life. It's the alchemy of sweetness and goodness, who doesn't love honey, it's a healing thing. And so there is something about, how we push prayers out into the environment, and very much about language as well. So there is this thing called eloquence in people. So, you can decide, okay, I'm going to go, I might eloquence you, and I might say, when I see you, I see the ocean washing upon the shore, carrying these shells and pearls of beauty with it. And you can carry on like that, and you tell people how beautiful they are. Because we sort of, we forget the beauty. We forget to look for the beauty in the people around us.
That's
And now,
so much more honey delicious than saying, I like your outfit or nice hair.
exactly, because if you're going inside, like the hair and the clothes, that'll all go with time, that'll fade away. But what's inside us, the spirit of the person that's sitting and standing in front of you or next door, that you're feeding, that again is a prayer in motion. You're giving us some honey. You're saying, this is what I see. I'm reminding you who you are. I'm reminding you that you are the ocean. When if I say that I see you, I see the ocean, I'm reminding you that you are the ocean and everything the ocean has inside it. So I think it's important that we start using language because it's our gift, and we start using it in that way. And yeah, it's magical. It's
Right.
like we can do all these ceremonies and this shamanic work, but actually if we change our language, and when shamanically, we do everything out loud. It's really important to pray out loud, because if everything is sound, if everything is song, it has power when it's out loud. It's, we can listen to a song and this figment of a song in our head, but as soon as we sing it, it has presence in the world. So, we have to pray out loud, and it's very important. When we call the spirits, we call them out loud. We stand firmly, we stand still, and we stand firmly, and we push our voice out across the land. We throw our voice as far as we can. And I'm not talking about shouting. I'm talking about there's something that comes from inside, and we throw our voice out and we say, hey, spirits, I'm throwing my voice out to you. Hear my voice, hear me. Hear
And
me.
I love that you remind us of the very basic thing that's often that we overlook, that we have a voice for the voiceless.
Yes.
All the spirits, the animals, plants, we have the voice.
Yes, yes. And a lot of traditionally, a lot of the shaman's work is saying if someone, is ill or a village is struggling, they would have been the voice of the mountain or the spirits that have been disturbed, and the shaman would have said, well, because you disrespected the spirit here. So now this is what we need to do. So you become the voice of the spirits or the land, and you tell everyone else, this is what has been told me. This is what we need to do now. So you are that, shaman is the go-between, and you do become the mouthpiece of the spirits. And I think the mouthpiece of the land, because there's this thing called animism, which is really shamanism sits inside of that. And animism is this where it's belief that everything is alive, everything is intelligent, everything has a consciousness, and everything has a spirit. So, and shamanism sits in the heart of that. So, we really have a responsibility to be the voice for all of that, and say, you must stop polluting this river, or using your voice to sing to the river, or using that it is an important tool that we have. So, we have all these dramas and stuff like that, but I think we forget about the language we use and the way we use our voice and the way we use our bodies. I'm very keen on this idea of processing across the land and using our bodies in dance and the way we move. The spirits come in, the shaman is possessed, the spirits literally jump inside us, and our bodies are used in that way. Well, not everyone can do that, but we can be possessed by ecstasy and love of the land and allow that to move us. So
I just want to share one story as evidence of exactly what you're saying, because I've spent the last month on the seacoast. I live in Turkey, so I was on the Aegean Sea, and every day I went and sang while I swimmed in the sea. I sang while I swam in the sea to the water spirits. I have a little water song I like to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, instantly I could feel the coming back to me, and the waves would soften, and I felt like I was being held. And then after that, as I went through the day, things were just easy and pleasant.
Because I suppose, how I describe it, you arrived home to yourself a bit more. Like when we arrive home to ourselves, when we remember who we are, it's not like bad things don't happen, but we can deal with them, and we just are more comfortable in the place that we are at.
Right.
I would say to everybody, if there's just one thing you do, is go and sing to the water, because the water really needs it. It's water,
Yeah.
right?
And I was doing it to feed them. I wasn't asking for anything.
Well, this is really important, that we have to do a lot of giving before we even think about, we have to build that relationship, because I don't go and knock on a stranger's house and say, can you give me a pound of sugar? It's usually someone I'm sort of nodding or I'm just introducing myself, or, you don't go into a stranger's house. So we have to build the relationship, and then we can ask. The more we have a stronger relationship, the more we can ask. But we don't do it just for the asking, Otherwise, we all have that one friend that we only hear them when they need something. And how do we feel about that? We don't feel very good, and we don't feel very heard and seen. Well, I think that probably the spirits are not very happy about it either,
Right.
So that's, if we think of it in terms of relationships and how we feel when that happens to us, how we feel when we're disrespected or not seen or not heard, we can say the spirits, they can get angry.
Willa, this is fantastic. We've gone over time, but it's marvelous to hear all of these great ways that weave into our lives. Really practical, everyday use, and full of beautiful honey and ideas.
Do you want me to tell you about the blessing ceremony?
Yes, that's what I was going to ask you. You have a very, very special gift for everybody that
I'll try to be concise. So I thought, really, what can I do that is going to stretch out as far as possible? So stretch out to as many people rather than just local people. So anyone that wants to give me their name, at the end of August or the beginning of September, I will do a little ceremony of blessings for everyone's name that I have. So it'll just send blessings out to them. So it just might give them a bit more sweetness in their life, or, who knows, or a bit more flow, or whatever they need. So I'll do that little ceremony, and then that can go out to wherever it is around the world, It doesn't it's not, people don't have to come to me for that.
That's a true gift, Willa. Thank you.
Well, let's extend ourselves out and be prayers in motion. So that's what I wanted to do. So
how should we get our names to you?
Well, I was thinking about this, and maybe I could do a post in the group and people could add their names to that. That might be a good idea. Or they could simply contact me through Facebook and let me know, and I'll check my incoming messages as much as. So there's the two ways that people could do it, or they could send me an email. So it's willa.holy, so WILLA.HOLY, that's all one word, at hotmail.co.uk. So they could send me an email. So and if they know someone that really needs that's really struggling, it doesn't have to be your own name, it can be someone else's name. So I'll just collect together all these names, as many as I get, and I'll do a little blessing ceremony for everyone that's in there. I will include you.
I'm definitely going to add my name to your list. And everybody, Willa's in the Facebook group, so come and join us in there if you haven't already.
So if that's all right, if I do at some point, I do a post, and then people, I know the post will drop down, but they can put my name in the search bar and it'll bring everything I posted up. And that might be a good way of people can just add their name in the comments. I thought that might work well.
That's a great idea. Well, thank you so much for your time and great conversation, Willa. I loved this episode with you.
You're welcome, and thank you for bringing the little hummingbird to the door, because I think it must have been there for you. Okay then, bye.